So my name is Ibrahim Abdul Mateen. I'm going to moderate this panel. And then I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to get this thing started. So why don't you start, Mohammed?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم. I think my introduction is in the booklet, so you guys can probably read that. Instead, I probably want to just do two quick things. Number one is plug the AMCC, because 3 years ago, this is kind of where we started at Noor Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Noor Vitamins. We came here, we learned a lot about the Muslim market through Dinar Standards work, and we met experts like Mr. Adnan Durrani, who was absolutely fantastic in sharing his expertise. And in 24 months on the market, we've become the leading halal pharmaceutical company, really worldwide. And that has a lot to do with a lot of the people in this organization, and obviously a lot of hard work on our part. But in short, we make Noor Vitamins, halal pharmaceuticals. A lot of the vitamins and supplements on the market contain pork-based ingredients. So we make sure that our US-based facilities are both FDA certified as well as halal certified, as well as every single ingredient in our products are also halal certified. We're founded by doctors and pharmacists, and our formulations are 100% all natural. And in only, again, 24 months, we're found in a couple hundred pharmacies, about 5 different countries, and major retailers like Walgreens, Duane Reade's, and Whole Foods. So that being said, probably not as exciting as some of the other esteemed panelists, but Sharif, I think it's your go.
Sharif, you're next.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sharif Al-Gamal. I'm a real estate developer, an investor, and a philanthropist. I'm very honored and humbled to be here this afternoon. Thank you for sharing your time with me and my fellow panelists. I'm excited to lean in and have you guys also lean in on the conversation. Let's have some fun.
Perfect. Great.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibtihaj Mohammed. I'm a member of the United States fencing team. I'm also the CEO and founder of Luella, which is a online modest clothing company. And I think that's it.
Great.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Jonathan Wilson, or you can call me Bilal, because about nearly 15 years ago, I changed my religion. I've come from London. I'm the program director at the University of Greenwich for the marketing postgraduate degree, so mainstream marketing, not necessarily this niche thing here. So I'm an academic, and I previously used to work in advertising, so now I'm a kind of hybrid part consultant for branding and advertising, and the other side doing some academic stuff, writing boring research papers, really.
But clearly the best dressed person on the panel. Or, I'm sorry, Jazz, I don't want to.
I traveled the
best dressed gentleman on the panel.
I had to pay for my flight ticket, right?
All right, Bismillah. So why don't we begin with you? I think really what we want to talk about are some some bigger concepts. If you just set the intellectual table a little bit for us and get us thinking about some of these issues of these intersections of the changing dynamics of the Muslim market, and what are we looking for in the future?
Okay. I think what's really interesting is this concept of tension and also paradox, because if we take a wider view and we think about branding or marketing, actually some of the best products and services and brands and things that we remember highlight a tension. There is a good guy and there's a bad guy, or even that there is a paradox, right? You have an affordable luxury or something like that. And if we look at the Muslim consumer market, I might like to put forward that question that, we talk about an American Muslim consumer, but do we mean American Muslim with a capital A and capital M, or do we mean lowercase a and lowercase m? Because if we take this on initial, first principles, there's this idea of congratulations, we have arrived. There are these Muslims and they are now consuming and there are now products. I kind of thought that they'd been around for a very long time. I thought that we'd been around for a very, very, very long time. So is it that we have changed in our identity? Is it that we are now this new demographic? Or is it that people have suddenly recognized us? I'm not quite sure what that is. So in some ways, I want you to think about the idea that words or concepts can be interpreted in a variety of ways. And I've got some words there, ethnocentrism, Occidentalism, Orientalism, or even, by calling ourselves American Muslim consumers, are we self-orientalizing? Are we exotifying ourselves? Are we really these exotic creatures that have very specific needs, that have rituals in a different way than other people within the region? So I want you to think about names and terms and the way that it changes the way that we look at things. I'd also like to highlight the fact that we're entering, if I want to take a positive spin, this is a dual cool area, right? And this is why I've used the word syncretism. This idea that now faith and fashion, or spirit and spirituality in business and all of these things is being embraced and celebrated, and not just within the Muslim community. If I go to Northwestern University, they mentioned as well that there are these people that are wanting to study MBAs and they see a higher purpose as to why they're studying. And as a kind of trigger, I'm showing you a picture here of this lady. Now, this is a Japanese lady. When I go to Japan and I ask, is this lady a Muslim? They say she's just a Japanese lady. And they're absolutely right. This is a lady wearing traditional Japanese dress. If I go to the Gulf, to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, they say, we think that she is a Muslim because she has a hijab, she has an abaya, and they look at the shoes and think, is this the latest abaya catwalk fashion? Actually, it's got nothing to do with Islam, but I wanted to highlight the fact that there are different realities available that we should really reflect upon and think, are things actually as new as we think, or are there things there that already exist? Now, the next thing I want to do, a bit of audience participation. Kind of hard with the floodlights, but I'm going to give it a shot. I've got a picture of a zebra, or a zebra, wherever you're from. Hands up. Is this an animal which is white with black stripes, or black with white stripes? Who says it's a white animal? Okay, 1, 2, 3, a few of you. Who says it's a black animal? Okay, a couple less. A lot of you. Look, you have to participate one more time. White animal? Okay. Black animal? Okay. Do you want to know the right answer? Well, it kind of depends, right? Recently, zoologists have tended towards the idea that it is a black animal with white stripes because your hair goes white, doesn't it? That's the reason. There's an absence of pigmentation. But if you're an anthropologist, you could say it depends on your cultural frame of reference. If you are from Africa, they found in findings, you tend to see it as a black animal with white stripes. If you're European, then it's a white animal with black stripes. And if you're a coconut, or you've been colonized, then probably you might see it as a white animal with black stripes too. That's my own interpretation. But I want you to think then that not everything is black and white like the zebra. There are different realities, there are different cultural frames of reference that very much color the way that we see things. But one thing that we have noticed is this idea that most companies that I talk to, companies, brands, people, students, whoever, they don't just want guidance, they don't just want education, they want transformational education or transformational leadership or market-leading brands. And that's a completely different beast. And so I want you to think about this idea of transformational leadership, whether that's your product or your service or the individual. How does that happen? And how do we deliver it with transcendence? Because after all, we believe in the akhirah, the hereafter, right? So how can we have this happen for all eternity? The final thing I wanted to highlight is, and this is actually an advert coming from Malaysia. She is a Malaysian pop star. I think she's signed to Sony, and she is marketing a product for females. But I want you to think then that in this age, and a lot of people talk about social media and online platforms, social media does one thing. It puts legitimacy in all of our hands. You don't need a business card or a formal job title to say who you are. You want to say something, you can say it, and that is the new reality. As a company, you have to accept an open source perspective where actually your customers are telling you what you have to do, and if you don't listen to them, you might not have a company tomorrow. So if legitimacy is self-defined, and if social media is this conduit where maybe there isn't an American Muslim consumer because actually there's a consumer and we connect, you know, whether you're in London or Jakarta or Singapore or Kuala Lumpur or any of these places. So if it's about this self-defined identity, the next thing I want you to think about is, what about aliens and ambassadors? Because I think a lot of the rhetoric or the articles that I read have two perspectives. One is that it creates almost this idea of a Muslim alien, whether that's a good or a bad thing, right? Muslims are different, therefore they need halal, or therefore they need praying spaces, or all these sorts of things. And so in some ways you are alienating a community because you're demonstrating how significantly different they are, because if you don't, where is the market opportunity? But on the other side, if you said that we're all the same, then you adopt an ambassadorial position. And by this, what I mean is that you basically say, look, we are just like you, or actually you think that we're different and we're not in so many ways. And so this veneer that you paint over some very significant issues belies the fact that actually there are some really important things that we still have to tackle. So between those two positions, I'm thinking that really it is about authenticity, balance, and communication. And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are this afternoon.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Can you just give him a round of applause, please? It was a perfect start to the conversation. Now I'm starting to think about on this panel who are alien, who take that side, who takes the ambassador side. It goes back to the way I had prepped these guys, and I asked them, be honest, be humble, be reflective. A lot of times as Americans and as entrepreneurs, we tend to be a bit Pollyanna, if you will. Like everything's going to be okay, everything's going to work out. But sometimes it gets a little difficult. And despite that difficulty, we live most of us live within an ecosystem of support. So Ibtihaj, if you don't mind just giving your opening comments and sharing your story a bit.
Sure. So I'm new to the entrepreneurial world. I started my business about, I would say, 5 months ago. I used my platform as an athlete to grow my business, and I wanted to, I guess, give a little bit of history onto how I got started. So as not just as an athlete for the United States, but also as a sports ambassador, I do a lot of traveling, not just on behalf of Team USA, but also on behalf of the Department of State, speaking to different audiences about my experiences as an athlete, but also to encourage women and girls around the world to be involved in sport, because I see, what sport has done for my life and the positive changes it's made in my life. So in these different, spaces where I'm speaking to different audiences, I do want to adhere to the tenets of my faith as a Muslim woman, and to be modest in my dress. So I, like many women who dress modestly, I was constantly on this search of, trying to find, long sleeve dresses. And if you ask any hijabi woman, any woman who dresses modestly, well, I think one of the number one things that we Google is like long sleeve maxi dress, and you're just like scrolling through images. I know I'm not the only one out here, but you're scrolling through images trying to find the perfect dress. And it may seem funny to some people, but it's actually a struggle that a lot of hijabis have. And I've noticed that it's changing, and I see that now we have this conversation that's being started, especially with the growth of social media. I again was constantly on the search to find clothes that not just were modest but also fashion forward. I know I myself could in the past name a ton of Muslim companies, a ton of Islamic fashion companies, but for me and my friends, it's not something that we necessarily would wear. I didn't feel as though they catered to us and what we were looking for. So I, was speaking with my brother one day, and he just, mentioned, why don't you just start your own business? Why don't, instead of constantly spending money, having things shipped from overseas, why don't you just do this for yourself? And that's, essentially how our idea got started. I flew out to Los Angeles. I met with manufacturers, and I developed samples, and from there we grew our business. We were 3 months in. My brother and I started this business. We were 3 months into Luella, and we sold over 4,000 pieces in the first 3 months. So, alhamdulillah, it's been very, very successful for us, and it's definitely, I think, been an eye-opener into, the void that I feel is in especially the American Muslim, economy, and the lack of concern, I would say, for the modest dressed woman and what we want to wear. I feel that there is a void, and in my attempt to start my company, that's the void that we were trying to fill. So I guess that's it.
Oh, that's great. That's perfect. I think this what we're trying to give you guys is a taste of some of the challenges that all of as our demographic shifts and change and matures and develops. And this is a crucial perspective, and we're going to come back to that when we do some questions. Great. Sharif, if you don't mind.
So my name is Sharif Al-Gamal. I'm very honored and humbled to be here today, and I want to thank Faisal Masoud for having the foresight and the persistence to establish this conference and keep moving forward with it. It's it's absolutely incredible to see the energy and to see the amount of Muslims that have come together with this call. My story is quite interesting and colorful. I started as a real estate investor in my mid-20s and achieved success fairly quickly in the business, focusing in New York City, one of the most efficient real estate markets in the world, and finding inefficiency in it. And during the process, I had a spiritual awakening after 9/11. I was not a practicing Muslim. I was only a Muslim by name. And after 9/11, I think I went to a mosque for the first time in New York, and I went to a mosque on Warren Street in Lower Manhattan. And when I went into that mosque, I felt very alienated and confused, and felt like I had been transported into a third world country. And I made an intention that I wanted to help establish a mosque for this community in Lower Manhattan. I was shocked that I was here in New York, in the financial capital of the world, in one of the most important global gateway cities, and there was this mosque in Lower Manhattan that really was the only one that served that demographic of Muslims. And I made that intention that I wanted to build a mosque for the community. Little did I know what I was going to get myself into. And fast forward a couple of years after finding the right building and really walking into my community just to, as a responsible American, as a real estate developer, walking into my local community board and introducing the project that I wanted to embark on, did I know what was going to happen to me at that point. And I ended up being in the center of one of the most controversial stories of 2010, and being instantly put into a firestorm where I had to defend myself, I had to defend my faith, I had to defend my whole identity as a Muslim. And thank God I'm sitting here and I came out of it alive. It was such an incredible experience on so many fronts and levels, and I'm grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gave me the opportunity to carry that baton for the period of time, and I'm also happy to report, inshallah, that we have commissioned Jean Nouvel, who is I consider one of the most important alive architects in the world, to build Park 51, which is, inshallah, the demolition of the buildings is happening in the next couple of weeks, and construction is going to commence by the first quarter of next year, inshallah. And John Nouvel accepted the commission. He is, just to give some of you some background that don't know about art, that aren't familiar with him. He's built the Arab Institute in Paris in the 1980s. He's building the expansion of the Museum of Modern Art right now in New York. He's come up with the project for the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, the Qatar National Museum. I could go on and on about his accomplishments as an architect. So it's extremely humbling that we were able to attract him and commission him to open up, which we believe will be the first Islamic museum, sanctuary, and masjid in America. The Aga Khan beat us in Toronto. But this will be the first one in New York and the first one in North America. 2 blocks where we need to make sure that we stand firmly for our identity and who we are. That's a little bit about myself and about my past. I'm also an entrepreneur and an investor, always looking for inefficiency, and I think that our community is at a very critical crossroads. I feel what I went through was an incredible eye-opener, and also a realization that there's a lot of work that we have to do. There's a lot of real important work that we have to do to really establish ourselves even stronger in our communities, stronger in our jobs, in our environments, America is craving for us to do so. We are, I believe, right now at one of the worst points in our history as Muslims. I believe that right now with what the demonic group called ISIS is doing, and how everybody is jumping on the bandwagon. Just hearing the other day that a top government official looked at a man in a beard on a panel and called him that he was part of the Taliban. It's a time for us to really wake up even more and to instill confidence in our children and make sure that we have a lot of work. I truly believe that we have a lot of work, and I see it every day. But I also see a very bright future for us, because I believe that our generation and the generation of our children is really going to cement our identity as Americans. As Americans, as mu'mins, as people who can articulate that in order to be a Muslim, you have to be a good Jew and a good Christian, and that we believe in all the prophets. People are craving to understand who we are because they fear the unknown and they fear who we are. So that's just a little segue, and I look forward to interacting with all of you.
Shukran. That was excellent. I don't know if I personally, give him a round of applause, please. As a Brooklynite, I'm like, I could care less about the American thing. I just want Brooklyn to secede from the Union and so start our own country. So you can go and do that thing, cement that identity. We'll start this own little country over here in Brooklyn. You can join that too. Mohammed, please.
I guess just real quick, I'd probably say my story is very similar to many of you in the audience, right? I think it's a typical immigrant story. Immigrant family comes over from Egypt, doesn't have much, lives very humbly, works very hard, and really sees an opportunity through education and hard work. And I guess what I would say, kind of the headline to the story is, dots connect really well in retrospect. And you kind of figure out why things played out the way they played out by the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by just kind of going through and just working hard and continuing to be ambitious. So in short, I studied pharmacology and medicine first, stepped into the business side of the pharmaceutical industry, and really assumed more and more responsibility both on the commercial side of the business as well as the leadership side of different pharmaceutical organizations. And I was just telling Sharif this earlier. One night during Taraweeh back, I think it was 2010 or 2011, I was approached by Hamza, who I studied with in school, and he just kind of said, "Hey, Muhammad, I have this idea of starting a pharmacy that makes halal vitamins in the back of the pharmacy because there's a need for that." And I guess the sub-headline to the story is think big. So I pushed Hamza and I said, what you just described is a great idea, but I think there's a bigger idea in that. I think this is a global opportunity. This is not a pharmacy on the corner opportunity. This is an opportunity to create a global brand. And we worked together, we put some resources together, we put our business plan together, we socialized it with investors like Sharif and others. We were fortunate enough to, I was in business school at the time, so we entered into like an incubator type of opportunity. We won that, got some recognition, and then quickly raised money to get started. And again, in retrospect, there are only three things that I probably know really well. If you want to talk about anything else, I'm probably not that good at it. One of it is medicine, the second is business, and three is our culture. And I think as an aspiring entrepreneur, if you're sitting out there, what I'd say is stay in your related space in some capacity. The reason why I think we were able to make Noor Pharmaceuticals somewhat of a success, and we still have a ways to go to make it even more successful, inshallah ta'ala, is because we're playing in a business that we know really well. I know the culture, I know the medicine, and I know the business, and I've surrounded myself with a team that can fill some of those gaps. So again, headline, think big, big opportunity, and think macro. Sub-headline is the dots connect in retrospect, and things in retrospect always make a lot more sense.
So what I'm going to do right now is give them a round of applause, please. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pose a couple of different questions to the panelists. One of the big ideas, some of us remember a time in the United States when the Muslim community was so small that Sunnis and Shias and everybody was in the same masjid. You guys remember that, some of y'all? Like everybody was just, if you were Muslim, you were in the same spot. Over time, so the young people today that we're talking about that are going to shift in the next 5 to 7 years, they're going to start to have significant earning power, that are starting to make bigger dollars, that are shifting into these leadership roles. Those young people that are basically going to buy your products, that you are going to be creating products for, they never existed within that context. Most of them grew up in a masjid that was dominated by their one group, dominated by their ethnicity and their cultural context. I just came from Wellesley College yesterday. Some of these sisters have never, ever existed outside of a very small, sheltered Muslim environment. So the real question is there actually a specific need for Muslims? Is there something special about us? As you mentioned earlier, Dr. Wilson, is there actually anything really special about us? And I'll bring it back to you real briefly. An executive at a large company once told me that the era of the American product is over. He was essentially saying, so this brings up this conversation around as American Muslims create products and create services to meet those needs of our consumers, the rest of the world is looking at us as an example in some ways. Are we going to use those things as a form of hegemony? Are we going to impose our products on other people? Or is there some other thing there? Underlying that is this idea that regular brands, non-Muslim brands, just normal brands in the world, they're trying to step back from the American brand piece and just put other identities and other characteristics forward. So if you could just touch on some of those ideas.
Okay, there's some really interesting things. It's a shame that we've got a short time.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the American glare if you start talking too long.
Okay, I'll give you the English cold shoulder. Now, if I can hold on to all of those concepts you're saying, I don't think it's the end of America, because America has been too influential in terms of the cultural output around the world. I think it's kind of one of the Muslim world's dirty secrets that, if you think about whether that's a nasheed artist or, you think about urban graffiti or color graffiti as they would call it, all of these things, and even more mainstream, business school education. If you go to the Gulf, they aspire towards a Harvard or an MIT style educational process. So I don't think that it is the end of America, but what I would suggest, and that tends towards a more Islamic frame of reference, is I think that we are entering an age with social media of the concept of giving in the hope of receiving. Now, if you think about most business models, the idea is that you create something. You create a need and a want, or you respond to a need and a want. But what if I was to say to you that you are going to create and hope that somebody will like what you've created and hope that they will give you money for it? I think that this is more of an Islamic perspective, and this is more of what's happening in the world, right? That we then put a tag on as calling monetization. Now, that's that kind of one area. The other area that I want to touch upon is this idea that a lot of what we're doing supposes that Muslims are not being catered for. So this supposes that mainstream corporates or marketing theories or any of these things do not cater for us, do not understand us, are conceptually flawed. And this is why you have digital marketing, green marketing, feminist marketing. You have all of these niche markets and groups that basically put forward this bogeyman character, this monolithic entity which does not move forward. What if I was to say to you that if they then respond, so if all of the big companies make everything halal, have halal supply chains, don't use pork lubricants, all of these things, what happens then? Are we happy? I actually think not. And I think that one of the key focuses then is that it's not just about the American Muslim consumer, this is about employability. Why is it that we have to always think about how much we consume? The reality is that we should be considering what is the role for the Muslim within mainstream organizations as well. Male, female, different socioeconomic groups, different ethnic groups. This is what it's really about, because otherwise, if everybody certifies things as halal, all of the power goes away. This isn't just about halal creation for me. This is actually about making sure that we have enough money to pay our mortgages off and to live. And this is the modern phenomenological development. It's that we have created halal now, and it's not just about being compliant with the Quran, it's actually also about job and wealth creation. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The other reality is that we have change at scale, because nowhere have you ever previously seen a situation where I was with an imam, and we look at, I'll give you about 30 seconds, right? A slaughterhouse in Brazil. If you were to think that there were 4 slaughtermen who can slaughter chickens, they do 45 a minute. That's the reality. That's how much chicken we actually eat. 45 a minute, and it's still slower than mainstream slaughter, right? So when we think about this idyllic view, and I might touch upon, the fact that you're a fencer, right? So you're a swordswoman, I do Japanese swords, and it's kind of ironic that we are capturing this aspect of culture, but actually we should be looking towards the future. And the future is this. I mean, if we have this idyllic view of halal being in a village, and the slaughterman and the knife, and even, the other picture is very interesting of the video game, these Islamic warriors with swords and turbans and everything, then I think that we're missing the point of the future, because in the future, within our lifetime, we could be uploading and downloading our brains. There are so many technological advancements. If you watch sci-fi, you're inspired by these things. How does the Muslim world cater for and respond to the advent of technology, and not just kind of piggyback on the social media thing? And the way that I would fit that in then is, what does that mean for us in terms of halal in the future, education in the future, consumption patterns in the future? It's going to fundamentally change the way that we're doing things. And I think I would like to kind of put that blue sky question out there to think, what is it that we're going to do? I mean, if we're going to be microchipped, if we're going to be uploading and downloading, if we're going to be creating things beyond simple apps. If you think about over the past few years, you've got smartphones now, you've got your 3,500 songs in one pocket, like Steve Jobs told us, you've got all of these things. What does the future hold? And at the minute, it should be more than meat and money, more than Islamic finance, and more than halal.
This is brilliant. This is great. This is brilliant stuff. I think the kernel in what you said, despite putting aside singularity, putting it to the side, which I love, and we could definitely talk about it. And actually, in the showcase, most of those things align with the 6 areas within the trend, the areas that we're going to see more development in, based on Moore's law, the singularity curve, into the future. But putting that aside for a moment, the point about leadership, as those things become more mainstream and embedded in all these different, that future that you described where halal is everywhere and all these things exist everywhere, that really is the future that, Mo, you are a part of, right? Your involvement in Johnson & Johnson, your involvement, and you might very well be a leader of a company one day, one of the largest companies in the world. You're already on that track, presumably, and I can toot your horn to the crowd. You don't have to do it yourself. But can you talk about balancing that leadership role between your own company and a big corporate entity? And how do you see, given his vision there, how do you see your role into the future, that future where it's ubiquitous?
Well, I think, so personally from a leadership perspective, you read a lot of books about some of the best leaders in business, right? So they talk about Jobs and they talk about Jack Welch, and, you talk about in these larger corporations who these, most influential leaders are, when in reality, we all know who the best leader of humanity ever was. And alhamdulillah, we live in his sunnah, or we try to live in his sunnah every single day. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tasliman kathira. And I think from a leadership perspective, if we don't lose our identity and we ensure that we operate in an ethical manner that still merges the value propositions that consumers need and are, pretty obvious to the business world or just kind of economics at large, I think we'll be just fine. And the truth of the matter is, you have to be able to sacrifice, and you have to be able to have the courage to step up and lead. And I'll give you a kind of quick story. So to Ibrahim's point, I run a relatively modest business at J&J, and myself and my team were in the audience amongst other J&J folks. And J&J, for those of you who may not be familiar with the industry, is really the biggest healthcare company in the world, but it's a pharmaceutical company first. And there was our CEO was at on the stage, and he was raising his glass with a toast. And he's there, and there's probably something like 10,000 people in the audience or something to that extent. And as he's raising his glass to the toast, and he said, "Hey, and I know Muhammad's out there somewhere in the audience with a glass of water, but he can raise his glass anyway." And I think we're leaving our mark on corporate America by people knowing that you're highly competent, you can do your job really well, and you can lead larger teams and larger organizations and represent yourself and represent your dean and represent your culture at still a very high level. So you don't have to jeopardize or lose something because you want to lead. You can be a good Muslim, inshallah, and still lead larger organizations and really bridge those two worlds together.
The pushback, Bismillah, but the pushback on that is always going to be, at what point will you have to, and everyone has faced this in some way, shape, or form, be it in academia, be it in elite athletics, be it in the industry, the rough and tumble industry of real estate. At what point do you, as you make your ascent, do you start to lose some of the values and the core principles that you came up with? And then do you have to recapture them? Can we start to make these ascents and not have to lose those things, right? Not have to lose those pieces of it that got us there. But I think I want to make another quick pivot, because I think this is a great point. We're talking about consumption. If we get to this level, we're assuming that the consumption happens at the level that it's happening now, and that profits continue and people keep making money. But I have a little uncomfortability with that. I wrote a book called Green Dean. I want us to make really great products that last for a really long time. I don't want to create more trash and pollute the planet Earth anymore. Ibtihaj, can you talk about your company in relationship to consumption and overconsumption?
To speak a little bit about what Muhammad spoke about, and the lack, I feel as though there's a lack of just attention when it comes to even, like, say, the Muslim woman, right? When I think of, say, the Mipsters video that came out a few months ago, and the backlash that the women in the video received as a result of this video, to me, the first thing that came to my mind was that there's almost like an ignorance within the Muslim community, that people felt as though it wasn't representative of Muslim women, and this closed-minded idea of who the Muslim woman is, And I think that the video showed that this is who Muslim women are, the youth, and especially here within the States, and it's almost like this ignored subculture that we have. And the premise of our company at Luella was to cater to the Muslim woman who wants to be not just trendy, but also wants to, adhere to the tenets of her faith, but also have those needs be affordable. It's easy to, head over to the mall, go to H&M, go to Forever 21, and purchase these things, but we all know that you're never going to find, a long-sleeve dress. You're never going to find something that isn't necessarily form-fitting. And what a lot of women are doing is going to these stores and layering. That's what we do. We don't buy one shirt. We have to buy 3 in order for it to be modest. So in a sense, it's like you're almost wasting money to be religious. And I think that even for myself as, trying to, perform in my space as an athlete, but also be religious at the same time, it is a tough, I think, juggling act in a sense, that you're always trying to balance these two things, but you don't want ever, your desire to be successful entrepreneur, your desire to be a successful athlete, or whatever, space that you're in, you don't want to lose your faith in that moment. And I feel as though that was why I created my business. I didn't want not just myself, but I didn't want, Muslim women as a whole, especially here in the States, and our desire to be fashionable, to lose sight of, to lose sight of what's important, and that's, to be modest and to become better Muslims. It's not necessarily to chase this idea of, being super fashionable. It's that you almost want to balance both. And I think that we're all doing that day in and day out.
Oh, yeah.
So I could ask you a really quick question.
Hold on. Okay, quick.
How do you counteract this idea of the not in my backyard? Because I've seen where there are some companies that really do understand, but they just don't want it in their backyard. So, for example, I think it was Donna Karan. Donna Karan had a Ramadan catwalk special. So when we talk about the maxi dress, if I go to the Gulf or to Southeast Asia, there are Western companies that produce products in those regions because they know that there is a demand. And they actually know that there are Muslims on home soil, but they just choose not to put them on their mannequins. I mean, I had a conversation with an agency and I said, if a London store could put a hijab on one mannequin in one store, that would really be something. That's kind of all I'm asking for, to show a normalization of our faith. So how do you cope with this concept where you're facing this battle every day as an athlete or as an entrepreneur, where they think not in my backyard?
So with our company, we're based here in the United States. All of our products are made in Los Angeles. We manufacture with our manufacturer is a woman who has created her business from the ground up. All of her seamstress are all single moms, and for me that was really important just in starting my business, not just to be green, but also to find a space where we are providing for people who may not have that opportunity otherwise. But to touch on Donna Karan and that whole Ramadan campaign that she ran, that wasn't available to us here in the States. That was something where I can think of tons of friends, especially ones from Brooklyn or New York or whatever, who are calling, people that they know in the Gulf, trying to get their hands on those dresses, and why is it that we have to, as Americans or as, I don't know, maybe if you live in London, why do you have to order something from overseas to, be modest and be fashionable at the same time? Why isn't that space here in the United States? And that's something that we were looking to avoid, that we're looking to fill.
I think part of the dirty little secret here, and people may or not agree with me, but a lot of times Muslims will not trust something that Muslims make. And to that point,
don't clap that. Don't clap that.
No, they agree, right?
Oh, okay. Clap that.
And a lot of folks here who give speeches or give talks, they know if a Muslim organization calls them to speak, they'll be like, "Oh, can you do it for free, brother? Please, inshallah, fi sabilillah." But and then non-Muslims will be like, "Yeah, we'll pay you your fee. We'll give you the full thing." Even for my Green Dean talks, I got a white Jewish woman to be my person that goes out and talks to people. And they're the one that talks to the Muslim folks, and the Muslim folks are like, oh, we'll get that contract in. I'm sorry, sir. Sorry, ma'am. It's very serious. It's actually this deep, sort of weird, post-colonial thing that we're dealing with. And so we're chasing the Donna Karan dress, when in reality, you and Nzinga are over here making better, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know the space as well, but you could be blowing Donna Karan out of the water, but they don't even know about it because they got their blinders on.
And just a really quick story. I mean, I know my company's super young. We participated at ISNA in Detroit. We had a booth, and it is insane how many people ask for a discount at a bazaar, right? How cheap can they get this dress down? Who goes to Nordstrom and says, hey, can I have this, $100 dress? Can I have it for $50? Only Muslims go to an event and ask for a discount on everything and want to bargain. It's the most frustrating.
So I'm going to ask.
I got to disagree with you. If I walk into Nordstrom's or Saks or even Armani to buy a suit, I ask for a discount.
I'm sure you do.
Okay, I ask everybody for a discount, and I think that's part of being a New Yorker, and ultimately being from Brooklyn.
I have a quick question for you, though. I want to, because I have a quick question. Because of your unique position, we're going to wrap up relatively soon, but because of your unique spot, you see every segment of the Muslim dynamic, right? You see the aunties and uncles who have money that support campaigns and electeds. You see people who are willing to throw down big money. You see people that are giving the pennies out of their pocket to support, right? Can you just give us a sense of some of what you've learned from this sort of your surveying of the entire dynamic? Because you see, all the new hipster Muslims as well. You see the whole thing. What some insights have you gained from this particular vantage point that you're in?
Well, I think to complement what everybody's been saying on the panel, and starting with Muhammad, and as I answer this question in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that we have to do is focus on our core competencies and really polish those stones for us to really make an impact on our environment and our society, and to focus on it and don't deviate from that. I think also that, unfortunately today, we don't understand the importance of our religious organizations, and I think we have enough mosques, okay? I really think we have enough mosques today around the country, and we need to start thinking of how do we start providing institutions that can help us further assimilate into our societies and providing services that are meaningful within our societies. And in order to do that, we have to understand that an imam can't make $30,000 or $40,000 or even $50,000 and survive on that salary and be a true product of excellence. I think that today, our religious scholars, and we need them. We need to be able to have our children aspire not to be in this culture of fame and money. We need them to aspire to be a Hamza Yusuf, to be an Imam Zaid Shakir. And the only way that we could do that is that we need to start paying our scholars as we would pay our doctors or professionals, and that's a six-figure salary within our communities, so that they can truly start posing this rock star status for the youth that we have. And this is a critical point in order for us to take the next step as Muslims in this country, in the most Islamic country in the world. And the work that we need to support our initiatives more. We need to dig deeper and realize that we're not going to lose anything when we dig deeper. I've been on the verge of bankruptcy several times in my career. And with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the persistence and the very simple philosophy that when I decided to go into business, I had a very simple philosophy. It was go big or go home. And I've never deviated from that. I've always thought big and tried to get to the top of peaks and mountains in business, and never quitting and being persistent. And that's the challenge that our community faces today. I think also that seeing I've had the blessings of really going around the country and meeting communities from LA to Houston to Chicago, which I think is Mecca for us, and to seeing the most fragmented and I think the largest Muslim community in the tri-state area in New York and Brooklyn. We have so much work to do to catch up to the rest of the country. And I think that, I think it's a great time, though. It's a time of opportunity and a time for us to really make our marks on society in a positive and impactful way. And our identity, and staying true to our identity and the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba, and seeing a video company like Badr that's trying to do these things, it's an incredible time for us, for our generation, and for the generations to come, inshallah.
Bismillah. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to end this panel. We're right at time. I apologize we didn't get questions, but I'm giving you full permission to bombard each of these panelists and bother them incessantly until they force their way out through the crowds to leave. But I want you to give them a very robust, hearty round of applause, please.
Hey, Ibrahim.
That was actually paled in comparison to what I actually want to hear. So another round of applause, please.
Hey, just 5 seconds real quick.
Literally 5 seconds.
All right. Hey, listen, the 5 seconds that I have for you guys is 2 headlines, right? Number one, you are not a victim in this country because you are Muslim. And there are a lot of people in this room, or I know of people that may think because I'm Muslim I can't make it here. And to Sharif's point, that's not true. If you work hard and you focus on your core competencies, you will. And number two, fundamentally, you have to think bigger if you're an entrepreneur and not rely on being Muslim for Muslims to buy from you. You have to provide value for Muslims to buy from you. Just because you're a Muslim company doesn't mean Muslims should buy from you.
I think my headline was going to be this. We need Muslim entrepreneurs to make things. to make very high quality, good things. We need to make what we call heirloom quality products that will last for generations as opposed to throwaway items. We need that to be the standard. And we need literally young people understanding the value of breaking things apart and putting them back together. The way we used to play with TVs and radios back in the old days, we need young people to get back into that rhythm. And so I'm pushing everyone in this space to talk to these folks, engage with them, and talk to each other about how can you ramp up what you're doing so that your quality just goes up a notch. And part of that is hopefully because we came together once a year at the American Muslim Consumer Conference, and every year our products got better. God bless you guys. Assalamu alaikum.